Hello and welcome, guys. So today we're going to be looking at the new BBC Panorama documentary about the lighthouse testing lab in Milton Keynes. It's a 30-minute long documentary, so if you want to go and watch the whole thing first, it's up to you. But we've got some of the clips here, and I wanted to go through some of the things that were seen in there and how we're supposed to deal with that as a company. And also some of the failings there. Its documentary highlights common problems seen in large-scale testing labs, and I wanted to go through what was done wrong here. So in this first clip, we're going to see people discussing quality checks during sample receipt, such as checking for breakages and matching barcodes. So let's have a look at what they do.
Start working in what's called the debagging area. As soon as I start unpacking samples, I notice a number of the tubes they come in leak. The lab has to deal with at least 8 different types of tubes. We're supposed to check for leaky ones when we open the bags.
Oh, okay, well, big ones now.
Yeah, these ones tend to leak as well.
They tend to leak. As much as the little orange ones?
I'd say the same.
It's a pain. Have you ever done it on shift where you've properly checked everything?
First shift, that's why.
Oh, you did the first shift?
First shift, I mean, not even then, probably like in the first hour or two. And then I just looked at everyone else, and everyone else is just opening and shoving things in. So I was like, alright, no one's doing anything.
Do you find it easy to like do all the checks and stuff while making the targets?
To hit 8, not really, because you know, need to check. This is correct, you need to check if it's not leaking, then you can cut it, you know. So all of these, we can do max 6, we can't do 8 per hour, as much as we try, you know.
How we can be sure the results get sent to the right people.
In training, they told us to match the barcodes, right? I don't know if they did that with you, but they told us to make sure this barcode and this barcode are the same.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you're going to sit down and do this many samples now, there's no way you can double check that every time. Like,
Yeah, you can't.
it's not feasible.
What, you don't think you'd... Would you not meet target?
I mean, I don't think so.
So we've just seen 4 clips there where they're discussing various problems they're having during sample receipt. I think there's 2 main ones that we can highlight there, which is number 1, they're receiving samples that are leaking. Particularly certain tubes leak more than others, it seems they'd be saying. And number 2, it seems like the barcode checks aren't being done, which is obviously a big problem with getting things into a LIMS system. The final reporting results, it can be a big problem. So when you're receiving repeated broken samples, you have to investigate and implement some sort of corrective action. They said they have 8 types of tubes, so why not go to your suppliers and talk and show you the data of different breakages of these tubes, and you can demonstrate some certain tubes are better than others. So you can cut down the amount of leakages there. You should also be investigating with your suppliers of those tubes why they're leaking, and that's obviously not being done because those tubes apparently are notorious for leaking. You shouldn't have something in your lab which is notorious for failing. Like, it's just a massive failure right there. The other problem I see here is they're not having enough resource to do the barcode checks properly. This is not the operator's fault, by the way. This is a management and resource management problem. As you can hear that guy saying, he's saying that everybody's doing it. So the problem's obviously not with individual operators, it's with the process itself. So this, as I said, looks like a resource allocation problem. You'll see later on that the way they seem to be structuring their days and the amount of downtime operators have during that day seems to be a problem, but I'll go on to that later. I think there's probably better ways to allocate resources within the lab to make sure these checks are being done, whether you're taking somebody off something else where they're not really doing anything and putting them as the person, you do the check and these people were on bag. So maybe you're keeping the same throughput of samples there, really, because a check probably takes about the same amount of time it is to take over the bag. So you've not got any loggerheads in the way your process flows through there. So yeah, there's a lot of problems there. So now we're going to move on to a few other clips. So the next area I wanted to highlight is there seems to be a change in expertise of the staff at a certain point in time. The first clip here says that when the site was first set up, they had lecturers and research scientists, but now the staff seems to be more graduate based. So let's just have a look at that.
During the summer, many of the scientists left to go back to their full-time jobs. Many of the 70 technicians on my team are recent graduates. There are 850 people working here now, and 4 different teams in the lab. Were you worried about standards and quality once you left the lab?
I think there was a genuine change in the level of experience of the staff that were joining as compared to the ones that left.
So quite clearly they've identified a changing of expertise in the staff there. So when you have a change happen like this with a business, you should be assessing the risks associated with this change of expertise. And then if you highlight that there's higher risk, you should be bringing in controls to control this risk. And it seems quite obvious the change in skills here. It seems like quite obvious there was a change in skills. So why didn't they bring in additional senior staff to monitor less experience? Why didn't they bring in greater quality control checks to make sure that the lesser experienced people that are going to be making more mistakes, these aren't being picked up? All these things can be mitigation to that risk. And there is one thing that actually with this documentary that I want to go into now, that I didn't like the way the documentary sort of hinted at it. And it's all to do with staff. And I wanted to point out that in several places, it seems like they're shaming these staff, as I'm caring, within the documentary itself. These 2 clips in particular here, I didn't think were particularly fair on the analysts that work in that laboratory. So here's the clips.
The lab says it's improved its safety standards and is meeting HSE guidelines. But the lab's social distancing rules are widely ignored.
Were people like more careful like when everyone was sick?
Let's just play something up there.
Huh?
Let's just play something up. No one cares.
During my time at the lab, we usually did between 18 and 40,000 a day. A lot of the time, we don't have much to do.
You want to go outside for smoke?
Yeah, why not? You're sick.
During that same week, the UK reaches one of many miserable milestones.
There's been more grim news on the coronavirus, with the number of COVID deaths recorded in the last 24 hours, more than 1,800. That's yet another record since the pandemic began.
So I feel like the overlaying of the people playing in the snow, the laughing and joking, and the empty lab with the COVID record death report is really unfair here. It's very journalistic, and it's trying to make out these analysts were doing something wrong. Well, they maybe shouldn't have been out playing in the snow, but if there's no work for them to do and there's no supervisors there directing them to maybe go and do some quality control tasks or QA tasks or anything else, what do you expect them to do? Like, are they just going to sit around and do nothing? Like, I don't quite get what the documentary was trying to get at there. And I feel the problem's not with the staff, but with the systems and the processes of the lab. And these are obviously not being done properly, and that responsibility lies with management at the end of the day. It's management that's supposed to be getting these processes correct and monitoring the effectiveness of them as well. So why are analysts, so going back to the point from earlier where I was saying it seems like they're not distributing their resources properly, why are they rushing in the morning to get samples unbagged and put into the system, but they have time to play with the snow and play FIFA in the afternoon? It just screams to me that you could be allocating your resources so much better to make sure that all these tests are being done properly. And you might even be able to save yourself some money as well. You might be able to find inefficiencies in the system. It just seems like it's not being planned very well. They're like, we just want this number of people, this number of samples, and they haven't thought about the way and the processes they need in place to be able to achieve that. So moving on from that now, we're going to look at a couple of clips I wanted to show about contamination during autopipetting. So here are the clips.
Had a lot on this one. Look at that gloopy boy.
It looks like there could be contamination to me, but this technician who's training me on the machine doesn't seem to think it's a problem.
one of like the pipette tips sort of like dripped as it was going across. I couldn't really tell where it went. Okay.
If it goes over the pipe, then you better like start again.
Do most people not?
A lot of people, like, if they see it, they'll like pause it and like wipe it off.
Technicians wipe off the gloopy samples with their gloves or a tissue.
Glue over there, so the gloopy one is like just barely
The lab says operators are trained to stop the process run in progress, clean down the system, and start the run again from scratch. There's another problem. I also see the test swabs stick to the machine's pipettes. My colleagues put their hand in the machine to push the swabs back down. Again, it feels like a contamination risk, so I ask my trainer what to do.
I think a swab carried across.
Oh, alright. You can just like pull it off the tip, or you can just like knock it back in the tube. But it's not really clear, as long as it doesn't go on the plane.
The sticky swabs sometimes fall across other people's samples.
So you can quite clearly see there that it's not just the practices of the analysts, it's the practice of the trainers themselves when they're training is extremely suspect. And to me, this screams a problem within the training system. If someone's training a new analyst and they have these bad practices, how can you expect the new staff to be any better? It's just going to propagate through your business and you're just going to have these bad practices seep in and they're going to stay there. So I would be asking the question of what's determining the competence of these trainers to be at the level that they can train new analysts. They also mention in the next clip that the process used to remove the samples from the tubes by a lab takes too long and is laborious. So the process looks like it's changed within the last 6 months or so. So let's just have a quick look at that.
Back when the lab opened, swabs were removed from the tubes before samples went through the machine. But the lab says it was time-consuming and laborious, and trials it carried out showed leaving swabs in the tubes is safe and carries less contamination risk than removing them by hand. Our experts disagree.
They're doing something which borders on criminal in a lab. This is about as disgusting as I have ever seen. You're going to have false positives everywhere. So all these people are going to be told that they have COVID when they haven't.
So somebody who's gone into this lab and wanting to improve processes, and I was investigating this particular thing, I would want to see the validation to change that process, which said that they could stop taking them out of the tubes. I would also want to see the risk assessment as well, because we've got experts here, massive experts in the field, and they're saying that this is completely wrong. So how have they validated this change if experts are saying that this is completely wrong in the industry? I would want to see the data. Did they actually do the validation properly? And this paperwork should be readily available. I mean, if they want to make it public and we can have a look and go through it and we can compare and send it to the experts and see what they say, then fair enough. But we need to see the actual data to be able to say that that change in process is okay or not. And even if you did change the process there and you found out it was okay, you've still got a contamination risk. So where's your control? Where's your risk control? There was obviously must have been a risk assessment done when this change was done. So where is the extra control measures for that extra potential contamination that could come into the sample? Anyway, so we're going to go over to the final couple of clips now that I want to show you. And this is from a QC person talking about the accepting or the voiding of results. So let's have a look at that.
Pressure to simply declare the orange results void. If your result is void, you have to get another test, and that could mean waiting longer to find out if you have the virus or not. He thinks any plate with so many orange results, potentially caused by contamination, should be retested. Instead, he says the negative results seen here marked green and the positive results seen here marked red are released.
even if it's half of the plate, they just want us to turn the samples for it and release it. But from a clinical perspective, we should actually ask for the reruns, but that's sort of the process.
Do you think that's a good idea, or do you reckon it would be better to rerun it?
It depends on what point you're looking at. From a political point of view, clearly I can send it out. From a scientific point of view, send it for rerun.
So would you have any confidence in the positives on that plate?
No, is the straight answer to that. If you've got that level of contamination on the plate which shows as a positive, how do you know the positive is a positive?
Spot on, expert. Right, bang, absolutely bang on. If you have that level of contamination on the plate, all the results are useless. There's no point of sending out reports for the actual ones that say they're positive and say they're negative, because you've got no guarantee that those results are right. It's completely pointless sending out those results, and you have to rerun them. There's no doubt about it. To me, the voiding of results is not so much of a problem as releasing the results of the positive and negative ones. One with the someone with got a void result would have to have another test. So at least they've got a chance of getting the correct result. Obviously, it's going to extend. They're going to have to do another test, and that's terrible. But it's not as bad as reporting the completely useless result, because people are making life decisions on whether they're positive and negative. So if you're sending out a positive or a negative result on something that's so contaminated, people are not having the correct information they need to make life decisions. It's extremely important. You can tell that this quality person knows these plates are no good, but he's being put under pressure, not just from the managers of the lab, but from politicians, people like Boris Johnson, saying that, oh, look at this amazing lab, we can do this many samples a day. It's not conducive to quality at all to have these politicians being involved in the system, and saying we want X amount of results a day. If they're not then willing to build processes and build quality systems that are able to handle that number of results a day, I'm not blaming this quality person at all for releasing those results. I'm blaming the pressure being put down on these people which don't understand quality and don't understand systems to make sure you get correct results. It's just not acceptable for politicians and whoever's managing this lab to be putting that pressure on that quality person to release something that he knows is defective. It's just not right. And you can see that even more in the next clip as well.
This shows a plate of 93 results. The orange X's are inconclusive results. This many suggests contamination.
What do the X's mean?
X's mean it's garbage.
Oh, wow. How did so many get contaminated, do you think? Because it looks like there's only 2 true positives.
That's a question I'll ask them. And we don't know. We're trying to figure it out. Yeah, so at the beginning of shift, things look nice and pretty. By 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, it things are getting again. By the time 8 o'clock comes around, we see massive, half of the plate is garbage. So everything that comes out of the lab is garbage. And we just trying to work around it so that the management can get what they want. But they want to say to Prime Minister Boris Johnson, we produce 70,000 results a day. Now they're looking for numbers. Like they need us to produce like 70,000 results every day.
So here again, you can see the problem with the emphasis on numbers rather than quality is creating so many of the problems that we're seeing there. If you want 70,000 results a day, you need to build quality systems and processes that can handle that throughput, and also have the level of training and competence in your staff as well, which can handle that level of samples. It's quite evident that these processes and the quality system are nowhere near fit for purpose for this many samples going through the system. This quality person also seems to be trying to investigate the problems and even have some sort of evidence of progression throughout a day. But he's getting no support from management, from what I can see, of pushing through this investigation and seeing what these trends, what they actually mean, what the root cause of these trends are. So I just feel for this quality person, because he obviously does want to know what's going on, but because of this pressure that's coming down from on top for these numbers, which they're arbitrary numbers at the end of the day, because they may be sending out 70,000 results a day, but can you trust those 70,000 results? And from everything I've seen here, I'd say no. I'd say you can trust 0 of those results. Like, none of them are trustworthy at all. So let's end on a high note, at least. And I want to finish with this one clip from one of the experts. And he says something that I think everybody needs to understand about quality within testing. So let's have a quick look at that.
It forces the operator to basically cut corners.
So I guess from the lab's perspective, they have to do a lot of tests, have to push people quickly.
I understand that, but there are ways of making things faster, and it's not by doing things at lower quality because your process is incorrect.
Now, I couldn't have said that any better myself. If your processes are incorrect, then you're not going to get the level of quality and the quality of results that you want. If you get your processes right, quality comes naturally. And quality doesn't necessarily have to impact on the amount of throughput of samples. If you get your processes right, the quality should be built into those processes, and it shouldn't stop you doing 70,000 samples in a day. You may have to hire an extra few people to do some quality checks here and there, but you can still achieve 70,000 samples. But there's no point of doing 70,000 samples wrong at the end of the day. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this small analysis of the recent documentary, and hopefully we can take things away from it to improve our systems and improve the quality of our testing. So have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.